All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at how writers manage to take the chaotic, messy, sprawling events of real life and somehow turn them into these beautifully crafted, universally resonant stories. It is a massive challenge to take your own personal history and make a complete stranger care about it. But honestly, that's the absolute magic of creative nonfiction. So let's pull back the curtain and explore the mechanics behind this fascinating craft. Right out of the gate, we have to tackle the spiky, kind of inelegant paradox right at the heart of this genre. I mean, think about it. Creative heavily implies imagination, right? Making things up, conjuring mental pictures of the unknown out of thin air. But nonfiction, that strictly deals with cold, hard facts, real events, real people. Smashing those two words together feels like a total oxymoron. It feels like it shouldn't even work. Because of that paradox, it's a pretty contentious term. It leaves fiction writers scratching their heads and makes academia more than a little uncomfortable. Which naturally leads us to ask, what exactly is this genre supposed to mean? If you are bound by cold, hard facts, how creative are you actually allowed to get before your true story crosses that invisible line and becomes, well, fiction? The boundaries are incredibly blurry, and trying to define it just by what it isn't, saying it's just not fiction, really only adds to the whole confusion. So, to clear all that up, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the creative nonfiction paradox, the 5 R's of truth, the flaws of memory, how to actually frame your true story, and finally, the absolutely crucial so what factor. Okay, section 1, the creative nonfiction paradox. The easiest way to wrap your head around this is to think about the end goal. Standard nonfiction gives you dry facts to simply inform you. But creative nonfiction, it uses subjective interpretation and literary techniques to illuminate the truth. Just picture the difference between reading a dry, textbook lesson about a historical event versus reading a deeply personal memoir from someone who actually lived through it. One just exists to inform you. The other uses poetic language, a really distinct authorial voice, and narrative techniques to illuminate a very specific, deeply human experience. Moving right along to section 2, the 5 R's of truth. If you're writing in this genre, there are 5 R's you absolutely must uphold. First is the real. That's your non-negotiable commitment to verifiable truth. Then comes remembered, your own subjective recall of what happened. Next is researched, meaning you actually have to fact-check your own life. Fourth is reflectional, taking a step back and asking yourself why any of this actually matters. And finally, retold, which is where you use creative narrative frames to bring the whole thing to life on the page. To see those 5 R's perfectly executed, you have to look at Barbara Kingsolver's stunning essay about a lost child in Iran. She masterfully weaves these totally verifiable news reports with her own speculative reflections on a mother's love. See, she researched a real mind-boggling news story about a missing toddler who was found alive in a cave, literally being nursed by a wild bear. Now, obviously, she couldn't verify exactly how that played out inside the cave, so she clearly signals to the reader that she is just speculating on those missing details. She brilliantly reflects on the shared DNA of mammals and this unconquerable force of a mother's love, turning an impossible news headline into a profound illuminated truth, a small wonder, as she calls it. Let's jump to section 3, the flaws of memory. Now, going back to that second R, remembering. What's completely fascinating and honestly a little terrifying for writers is how our own minds deteriorate over time. 10 years down the line, you aren't actually remembering the original event anymore. You are recalling a memory of a memory, and it's probably been heavily embellished to protect your own ego. Science actually tells us that every single time we retrieve a memory, it loses quality, kind of like making a copy of an old VHS tape. We block things out or we completely invent details just to preserve our self-image. Your memory is essentially a flawed narrator, and if you are committed to the truth, you have to actively fight against that. So, because our memories are so flawed and highly subjective, a scrupulous writer has to rely on the third R, rigorous research. You have to verify your own personal truth. Did it actually rain the day you left home? Was your uncle really at that specific party? Today we have internet tools that can tell you exactly what stars were in the sky on a given night thousands of years ago. Use them. Interview the people who were there with you. You might be completely shocked to find out that your own family members remember the exact same pivotal event in entirely contradictory ways. All right, section 4, framing your true story. Once you have your researched facts, you have to condense this sprawling, chaotic life into just a few pages. And you do that by anchoring your narrative to specific frames so you don't overwhelm the reader. You don't just write broadly about your childhood. No, you frame an essay around a single broken rosary to track generations of family amends. Or you center it around a traumatic plate of live lobster sashimi to perfectly encapsulate a fleeting moment of extreme cultural alienation. You need a container for the chaos. And when you're describing those frames, it is highly recommended to take Ernest Hemingway's advice. Be incredibly suspicious of adverbs. Rely on relevant specificity and really strong verbs instead. Please do not tell your reader about your old, ratty, gray, moth-smelling, tattered blanket. It's just sensory overload. Choose one or two laser-focused adjectives and let your verbs do the heavy lifting. The secret to making your universally human story resonate is burying it in highly specific, authentic details. Another great framing tool is the power of juxtaposition. You can pair contrasting images together to evoke massive emotional reactions from your audience without ever actually stating the emotion outright. Think about placing a massive, grotesque Frankenstein right next to a tiny, pristine little girl who is offering him a delicate flower. That intense visual contrast forces the audience to feel the fragility, the danger, and the unexpected gentleness all at the exact same time. We didn't need to write, "It was a scary but sweet moment." The juxtaposition did all the emotional heavy lifting for us. Now, as you're putting this narrative together, keep this non-negotiable rule in mind. You can absolutely explore different perspectives to build empathy, but your point of view, the literal voice speaking to the reader, must remain your own. Pretending to be someone else instantly turns your true story into fiction. You can't write an essay from your mother's perspective using the word I and claim it's nonfiction. You are not a mind reader. You only know your own thoughts. You can speculate, sure, and you can empathize deeply with how others were affected, but the voice telling the story has to undeniably be yours. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the so what factor. This is the pivot from the rules of the craft to the true art of storytelling. Vivian Gornick hit the nail on the head when she basically said, your tears or your raw emotions don't automatically make a good story. It is your unique insight and your ability to pivot from that emotion to actual meaning that captivates a stranger. And listen, this is incredibly hard for new writers to accept. Just because you felt a profound, world-shattering sadness when your dog died doesn't mean a stranger reading about it will feel a thing. Stating, I was terribly sad, is just an emotion. The meaning is what you learned from the event. It's the universal truth you managed to extract from that highly specific pain. So before you sit down to write your next true story, you have to ask yourself, what profound insight are you actually offering the reader? You need to find the meaning hidden within your own beautiful, messy life. Why should a stranger give you their time? Did you just survive a near-death experience? Or did you realize something totally profound about human nature while you were surviving it? Avoid the cliches. Please avoid easy platitudes like everything happens for a reason. Dig deeper than that. Your truth has real value, but it is your duty as the writer to illuminate that value for the rest of us. So ask yourself, what is your so what? There is so much more to explore in the art of creative nonfiction, but until next time, start writing and see what you discover.